Let's cook.
I can't remember a better, more important football game in the history of mankind.
Josh Dobbs cook. Let's go.
Let Josh slosh.
Hey, before I even properly greet you, let me just say this game tonight is a show, and I'm cursing on the air, but that's what we're looking at here with Titans and the Cowboys. Matty Savoca is in today. Jeff, been a little under the weather. We appreciate Matt hopping in. And how would you describe this game, Matt?
Yeah, all the expletives, look, it's football. It's Thursday night. There's going to be a time in mid-March where I wish we had this game, but right now, Josh Dobbs and whatever is left of this Tennessee Titans team versus a Cowboys squad that's marching towards a January and February relevancy, dare I say. I don't know what to expect here. It's football. I'm thrilled to be with you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got the all Long Island show here. Long Island natives, at least.
Well, I grew up in D.C., but my family's there now. I spent the holidays there, so getting more accustomed to that Long Island life, as they say out there.
Long Island ties. There you go. All right, give us a like, subscribe, keep up with all of our shows, our DFS offers, our giveaways. Hit that notification button. It gives you alerts when our shows go live. We've got NBA Advantage coming up after us. Remember, too, almost all of our content is available in podcast form, which means you can take us on the go, it's at your leisure, all that kind of fun stuff. All right, so why is this game such a mess tonight? It's the Titans, it's the Cowboys, two teams that are competing for playoff spots, that are looking ahead. The issue is this game really doesn't mean a whole lot for either team. So for the Titans, if you're not aware of this game means they have to beat the Jaguars next week. That their playoff hopes hinge on. So Derrick Henry, doubtful to play tonight. Malik Willis, I'm not sure if this is related to that or not, will not start at quarterback for Tennessee. Instead, it will be Josh Dobbs, who is not on the board if you're playing the pick'em contest at No House Advantage. We'll get into that. For the Cowboys, they're pretty much locked into that top wildcard spot in the NFC, though. If they win both and the Eagles lose both, they could end up winning the division. So they rule out Tony Pollard. Maybe it doesn't mean all that much for Dallas either. I think the inactives will be very interesting for this game, but that's why this is all a little bit of a, well, it's quite a bit of a mess. And the Titans, they're wrestling on their defense. I mean, the line's got up to, 14 now? The Cowboys are favored. There's a lot happening here, man. A lot of moving parts.
Look, there's a certain way that Vegas intends this game, expects this game to go. And ultimately, I think that there's a really, really low probability that Tennessee shows up offensively. And Dallas, say what you will about them in recent years, they're a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. They should cruise in this game. From a No House Advantage perspective, that means we're probably digging a lot of unders today. There is one over at the top in terms of optimals, looking at the No House Advantage tool that, is appealing, but a ton of unders, especially on that Tennessee side.
And that No House Advantage tool is free, stokastic.com, and you could use it along with us here. All right, so let's look at the quarterback, and we'll start with Malik Willis, because even though he's not going to start in this game, Josh Dobbs is reportedly going to start for Tennessee. That doesn't mean we won't see Malik Willis. So we see it a couple of times a year, right? These primetime games, the showdowns, the backup quarterback ends up saving the day and, doing some things. This is where you look at for Malik Willis. 114.5 passing yards, half a passing touchdown, 1.5 interceptions. It should be a free square, the under on the passing yards, and it will, he'll be on the actor. Is there room to get contrarian and cutesy and try to get him a passing touchdown, which would be the first of his career, or something loony? Like, how much do you think Malik Willis plays, if at all, in this game?
If you had to project it out, it would be like 1.5 quarters, maybe less. Look, I think they handle this like a preseason game. I'm not fully convinced that Dobbs starts the whole game. And the most that Dobbs has ever passed for in an NFL game is 24 yards. He's only had 9 attempts in a game, so he's probably going to crush that today in terms of expected opportunity. But look, Malik Willis and Dobbs splitting time at the quarterback position really just affects downstream with these skill position players not expected to have any sort of production. So under on a lot of these yardage props, even though they're middling to begin with, still seem pretty good to me.
Yeah, so you can go, the 7-pointer can easily be under passing yardage for Malik Willis here. And even if he plays 1.5 quarters, based on what he's done in his career high is 99 passing yards in a game. And those are full games, at least 3 of them that he has played thus far. You can feel pretty confident about that. And then, yeah, you can go to the receivers. So you got Robert Woods, 39.5 yards. He's only gone over that 3 times all season as it is. Treylon Burks, 45.5 yards. He's been over that 4 times all year in just 9 games. And then Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, you go under as well, 30.5 receiving yards. And he's only done that 4 times this year. So, I mean, this passing offense for Tennessee has kind of stunk all season. And now we're looking at Dobbs and maybe
Welcome to the
a little bit of Willis
Stokastic
in this game.
YouTube channel.
I guess the
Today
only thing
we'll be
is,
going over the NFL.
So weeks ago is Patriots-Bills. I took all unders. I finished first place on No House Advantage, but I won like $80. I mean, you just... Is it worth it to go over on or under, I should say, on anything when everybody's going to be doing it? Like, how do we get a little different here? What could be different?
Well, first of all, we've got those extra modes now that we can play. That versus the house mode gives us a little bit more when we're right on everything. So it doesn't really matter in that regard whether it's under or over. We just got to be correct on our picks. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there are some concerns about duping with a lot of people. So one thing we can do is go back to the tools. And one thing that, even though our intuition says that these yardage unders feel safer, it's actually these receptions under, especially for these Tennessee receivers, that appear optimal in our sims more often. Treylon Burks under 3.5 receptions looks like his top offer today on NHA. Robert Woods under 3.5 receptions and Westbrook-Ikhine under 2.5 receptions. Not saying that the yardage for any of them, especially the under in this expected game script, that they don't look bad. But in terms of our sims, the receptions actually look a little bit better.
So being that Tennessee's just not going to pass much in this game. So even if they can hit a big play to Treylon Burks or Westbrook-Ikhine, but you're not going to have the volume of passing, even if Tennessee falls behind in this game with what they're doing at quarterback, more likely than not. And I mean, the other key part of their Tennessee offense is Derrick Henry. I'd be shocked if Derrick Henry plays. Now, you can't play him on No House Advantage. If he's inactive, you'll get 0 points wherever you put him in, over, under, don't get cute. So we don't have a running option for Tennessee. There are no rushing props on the board, at least as far as the pick'em contest goes. So yeah, it's kind of a void, this Tennessee offense, and what to do with it.
We do have Hassan Haskins on the versus the house mode.
Yes.
I saw, it looks like in terms of opportunities, there's no one safer on the Tennessee side. We have him projected for about 16 and a half opportunities in our latest run of projections here. Honestly, that doesn't look too bad. If you're going to bet an over on anybody, 49.5 yards, he needs a little bit of efficiency. But if you wanted to throw that in as a versus the house, as a fifth play, I don't think that's a terrible idea. Still, the expected efficiency, for this Tennessee offensive line that, look, it isn't good. It's built on Derrick Henry's prowess as a rusher. I think 50 yards is tough to really bet on if you're trying to explain the over.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't expect Tennessee to have the ball a whole lot in this game, being what Dallas can do running the football, being that, it's not just the Tennessee offense, it's shorthanded. They don't have anybody playing on defense either. And this is a game where, I mean, forget about even Ezekiel Elliott. We can get into that, but you could see the backup running backs for Dallas getting into the action quite a bit here today, and what will likely feel like a preseason game, as you called it earlier. Something I will note versus the House, something to keep in mind going forward, when there is breaking news during the day, Malik Willis was still on the board at versus the House for about 45 minutes after the news broke that Josh is going to play. Actually, I shared it in our premium Discord in the football chat, which is worth getting into for little tips like that might come up. But for about 45 minutes, you essentially had a freebie up there. Malik Willis is no longer up. But when there's breaking news during the day, be sure to check out if these guys stay up on the board versus the House is something that you might be able to take advantage here. So that's always
Definitely
a good thing. We like that. We like that. No House advantage. If you haven't played there, now up to a $100 deposit. So you sign up. Use the link below. You put in $100. They're going to give you another $100 to play with. And you can play versus the House, play in the pick'em contest. We're mostly looking at the pick'em contest where you compete with 1,200 people for your opportunity to win $5,000. It's the first place prize. You tend to see a lot of overlay there. For example, there was an NBA contest last night that was just more than half full. So it's 1,200 entrants, and then only 636 people, I think it was, played. So that is a lot of overlay. Overlay is quite all right. That means, same money goes to the winners, no matter how many people are in the contest. So take advantage of that. Always be looking for that over at No House Advantage. Dak Prescott, Matt, let's look at this Cowboys offense a little bit. I guess with nobody playing on the Tennessee defense, with Tennessee essentially like kneeling out this game, how does that affect Prescott's numbers and how much he might or might not have to put the ball in the air?
It certainly affects him. And look, and we got a question in chat already. Do the Cowboys even need to play their starters all the way through in order to win this game? Definitively, we're not sure. Certainly less sure than most NFL regular season games. And so even if the Cowboys have a pass rate that is typical to their typical gameplay, they may not have the same amount of total attempts. Their 32 pass attempts per game is currently 22nd overall in the NFL to begin with. Dak Prescott is 25th in the NFL in pass attempts. He isn't someone who is passing the roof off. He relies on efficiency. He's 12th in adjusted yards per attempt this season. So look, I think Dak Prescott overs are fine today, but there are concerns that come the third quarter and fourth quarter, he's sitting on the bench. And in that case, if you want to play that narrative and just kind of avoid the full game stats that our tools would typically say, I don't mind that at all today.
Yeah. Well, 270.5 passing yards. That's a lot of passing yards.
Right.
That is a game script where he has to play the full four quarters. And then you're also looking at 2.5 passing touchdowns. We typically see 1.5 passing touchdowns for these contests in No House Advantage. Now, he might be able to throw 3 passing touchdowns in the first 20 minutes of this game against the third stringers of the Tennessee defense, but they'd have to be passing the ball in those goal line situations. The other one that jumps out that I really liked until Tennessee really showed their hand that they're going to bench every interception line for Prescott. He's thrown 8 interceptions over his last 5 games. It went for the over last time against the Eagles. He's had at least 1 interception in 5 games, 8 of the 10 games he's played overall this year. But again, there's not much of a reason for him to be putting the ball in harm's way tonight.
2.4 interceptable passes per game. That is top 10 or bottom 10 in the NFL among qualified quarterbacks. The offense is good, don't get me wrong, but they take shots, and Dak Prescott sometimes gets it wrong. I like his aggressiveness, by the way. I actually like how Dak Prescott has been utilized within this offense. They're keeping him protected. They're not really having him run. So if this were a potential shootout, and you can never say never with games in the NFL, but this is as close to never in terms of potential shootout as I can remember.
Did I mention there's rain in the forecast too? Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh. And look, Prescott is capable of throwing for 270 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's highly unlikely.
Yeah. This game is a little messy.
This
All
is
right,
a
so
mess. Go home, game. You're drunk.
yeah. So all right, so we're gonna find something here. I mean, maybe the Cowboys receivers is really where we'll have some choices to make. Michael Gallup, 4.5 catches, 57.5 yards. CD Lamb, 6.5 catches, 85.5 yards. What we're looking at. Lamb is typically that number been under his numbers in all but one game so far this season. We did generate 7 targets last week. Let's start with Gallup. Automatic under, or you have some hope here that he becomes a featured part of the passing game tonight, particularly, maybe CD Lamb doesn't see a full amount of reps.
I think the way I'd play this, especially if I'm using multiple platforms, is I could take a bet on a player like Michael Gallup in a showdown contest. But Michael Gallup under 57.5 receiving yards is our third highest optimal in terms of sim percentage correct right now. Look, if you're playing versus the house, I think Hassan Haskins over 49.5 yards will compete with that group. But Michael Gallup under 57.5 yards, I think, is in that top tier group right now because you need multiple things to go right. You need Prescott to be pushed in a way that we don't expect, and you need the offense in the passing game to flow away from the most likely option in CD Lamb. 58 receiving yards in an NFL game is not nothing for this number 2 receiver. Look, the defense is bad enough on Tennessee, but I would definitely put the under in one of my top tiers, like 6 or above.
And you could just play on No House Advantage and realize this, because if you play versus the house, Gallup's line is 33.5 and he's 57.5 in the pick'em contest. So you kind of get the idea of what No House Advantage is looking at here. I'm really just spitballing because, man, I'm going to play 7 unders in at least one of my lineups tonight. And I feel like if it's $10 entry, I'm going to tie with 300 people and come out with $20.
I think I got us 2 overs though. Now that I'm analyzing it, looking at our latest projected stats, I think Hassan Haskins is going to smash that 49.5 number.
But that's not in the pick'em contest. That's
not in the pick'em.
That's
not
versus
in the
the house.
For sure.
Because I'm worried about the pick'em contest. Get different there. I don't care about getting different.
All right. Have we added Zeke?
Right.
Have we added Zeke yet to the mix?
We haven't talked about Zeke. So let's get into Zeke. 61.5 is the line. Go ahead.
I think that's where we hit the over. If we want an over in here, look, this is just stat projection fundamentals in the NFL, right? When you have a team favored by this much and you know where the opportunity is flowing and you know a team wants to just get out of there, which Dallas absolutely does this Thursday, Zeke is an obvious play. He's going to split time. Is Malik Davis, someone that you're interested in? Sure, more in a DFS perspective. We'll talk about him in a minute, but Zeke should be the guy tonight. Feed him, get out of there with a win, move on.
Now, Tony Pollard is going to be inactive tonight. That was a report that came out about an hour ago. So I suppose, do the Cowboys still limit Zeke, you think? Or is this the game where they say, hey, here's the ball 30 times? Because, again, this game just doesn't mean a whole lot for Dallas. And it's not an unreachable number at 61.5 rushing yards for Ezekiel Elliott. But we know about Zeke. He's going to need a lot of volume in order to get there. I think you're probably looking at least 18 carries to get to 62 yards that you need tonight.
You've definitely seen moments where Zeke looked efficient if you've watched the Cowboys play, but the advanced metrics show someone who is not running at his best anymore. I don't know what else to say. He's 49th in the NFL in yards per touch, in true yards per carry, which somewhat tamps down breakaway runs. He's 42nd among running backs, 30th in evaded tackles. His breakaway run rate is outside the top 35. He's on a good team. He's playing decently when he's given good opportunities, but he's an opportunity guy. That's the bottom line. It's just not an efficient player anymore. I hope I'm wrong against a possible B squad Tennessee defense.
Yes.
If there was ever a time for Zeke to eat like it was 2017, it would be tonight. I'm still taking the over on 61.5 rushing yards just because of the pure volume, but betting on 100 plus is, for that reason, I would not say that the true ceiling game is really in play.
Yeah, and if you're playing versus the house, that number's up at 71.5 rushing yards for Elliott, which seems pretty fair. So, again, looking at the pick'em contest, there aren't a lot of options here because there are only 11 players on the board. You have to take 7 different players. And Derrick Henry's not expected to play. Malik Willis you can use, so he's fine. Tony Pollard is off the board. So you got to use those other 9 players, and everyone's going to go under on Malik Willis. So again, like just how to be smartly contrarian. And I'm trying here. And we got a couple, like you could across the board. You can take under for 6 spots and then over on Zeke rushing, which certainly makes a lot of sense. We can look at, you said some of the receiving yardage maybe for Tennessee. We could potentially look at to get over. I guess the one guy we haven't talked about is Dalton Schultz. 3.5 receptions, 42.5 yards. There's only a couple of pivot points really here.
Let's see. Schultz is the one we're least certain about. Mm-hmm. He's got an over of 3.5 receptions. I actually think the over on Schultz is a very reasonable bet. These dump down or third down and short, plays that Prescott will need to rely on him. I'm not expecting a huge amount of volume, but at the same time, we're just 3 games removed from him having a 10 target day. Look, I think that 15 to 30 yards, honestly, is his most likely outcome. But I do think that racking up a few catches and taking it over there, a reasonable over at 3.5, might be another way to get contrarian. It's just one that in our tools, we're just less confident there.
Yeah.
It's basically a coin flip.
Do you like games like this where there are so many like uncertainties, unknowns, moving parts? I mean, it's like a preseason game, but at this point, at least we know the characters a little better than we generally do in August.
I would say this. If we had a little bit larger of a player pool, like instead of 11 players here, we had like 17 or 18. Not to say that stochastic projections and tools don't always shine, but they really shine when it comes to those secondary, tertiary options in the projections. We tend to just have an edge there, and maybe NHA knowing that fact, making us squeezing us a little bit, but still. It's always hard when you have to pick 7 different players and we only have 11 options. So I do think that we're scrounging for overs. We're really trying to find reasons. And, I say this on the matchup show I do with Laffy every Thursday morning. We just did it a few hours ago. If you have a reason to believe that a game plays differently than everyone expects it to, build lineups based on that narrative. But we have to be honest with ourselves. This game, it's just really hard to see it going way over its total. And it's just really hard to see Tennessee producing all that much, especially with so many unknowns.
Well, let's do it. Let's make this game an over. All right. We're getting to 50 points tonight because we've got 9 minutes to go on the show. So we're getting to 50 points tonight. How are we doing that? And where with this pick'em contest where we don't have access to the Titans running game. More than likely, because Derrick Henry doubtful, not expected to play. We don't have access to the Titans quarterback because Malik Willis is almost certainly an under with everything there. Mm-hmm. So, again, we're looking at the Titans receivers, maybe some overs there. And Dak Prescott, if you really want to get different, you take the over, I guess, on the passing yardage or the passing touchdowns or even the interceptions and try to build for a more offensive game. That could correlate at least, and you'll probably be by yourself.
Yeah, if this game goes to 50, one of the way, I'm trying to think what the Sims would look like, saying set this game, it definitely goes to 50 points. There's probably a lot of 42-8s in there for Dallas.
Dallas defense is probably scoring, which doesn't really help us with this pick'em contest.
I think then you could grab some garbage time receptions over. Actually, that's realistic, even in a more likely outcome. Treylon Burks, I wish it were 2.5 reception. Yeah. I could see 4 receptions in that type of game environment. Nick Westbrook-Akine, over 2.5 receptions. I think putting these in your pick'em contest at the 1, 2, or 3 spot makes a lot of sense. And then if you're trying to be really different, you put those overs higher up, and you may fly past the board, again, if the game goes differently than everybody expects. It's hard for me to see Robert Woods hitting the same sort of totals that we expect from Burks. When both are on the field at this point in their respective careers, I expect Burks to be more productive.
Yeah, I think Woods, 2 things. One, he's more of a possession receiver. So you'd be looking at maybe the receptions, but 4 receptions tonight looks a little tough. And the other thing would be, I don't know how much he's going to play. If Tennessee's resting all of their veterans, why would they leave Robert Woods out there for a full allotment of snaps tonight?
I really, really don't know. They need him next week. I'm trying to look. We're talking about a player at 5.1 targets per game. If he gets his typical amount of work, which, oh my gosh, there is no guarantee that he gets his typical amount of work. He has to be incredibly efficient. He needs at least an 80% catch rate. It's really hard to bet. I can't really see it. Look, piling these unders is probably where you want to go. It's just about mixing and matching, whether you're doing a receiver's receptions or their yardage. And of course, we did give you 2 running back overs. Yep. Only one is relevant for that pickup contest, of course.
Yes, Zeke would be the over for the pickup contest, and then you can look at the Titans backup running back Haskins for the versus the house. Now, be sure to check out over at Stokastic.com. Not only do we have free NFL projections for you for Thursday Night Football for all No House Advantage contest. Check that out over at Stokastic.com. But we also have Lineup Generator, which is a pretty nifty tool if you're playing in DFS contests. It won't help you out on No House Advantage, but it'll help you out on other sites, allow you to I call it being like intelligently contrarian, because it's easy to be stupid contrarian, which is what I'm being during this show here with No House Advantage. But it'll kind of tell you, hey, you have some value here, you're contrarian, but you're not being an idiot. That lineup generator is pretty valuable, Matt.
That lineup generator is insanely good. And look, some of the stuff that they do behind the scenes to lop off all of the ones in the sims that don't perform well enough to make sure they're not only unique lineups, so you're getting different stuff than other people are getting, but they also give you lineups that perform well, which they don't have to do. They could just randomize that thing. It's really cool what they've done.
Yeah, and that's included when you sign up for DFS packages at Stokastic, and you can play around with that, especially on a night where there's a lot happening. And you mentioned those secondary options that Stokastic's so good at projecting. It will matter on some of those other sites, even if we don't have access to those guys on No House Advantage, like Malik Davis, for instance. All right, so let's look versus the house, and we'll give a quick rundown here. And you can play these with the NBA. We'll have the NBA No House Advantage show coming up next. They'll give you some great picks tonight on a relatively fun NBA slate. I think it's 7 games tonight, a couple of good ones. But all right, let's just fire away. We'll do rapid fire. Dak Prescott, 240.5 passing yards. Pass, or you like one of the over-unders?
240 pass.
Ezekiel Elliott, 71.5 rushing yards.
Over.
Okay. And Haskins, 49.5. You said you lean to the over on that.
Over, pretty hard.
Okay. So would you play over on both running backs? Did we just have that kind of game?
Yeah.
CD Lamb, 73.5 receiving yards. That's a big number.
Under.
Wow. Michael Gallup, 33.5 receiving.
Pass.
Dalton Schultz, 38.5 receiving.
Under.
And would you play Schultz under with the running backs over? Does that correlate in your mind? Or?
It doesn't really matter in a one-game slate too much. There's a ton of randomness in there. Yeah. But I also think I'd feel much more comfortable if I'm betting an over for Schultz going with receptions than yardage. He hasn't been a hyper efficient in terms of yards per touch player this year, especially with the knee injury. He's still getting over.
Okay. Burks, 25.5 receiving yards.
Over.
Woods, 24.5 receiving yards.
Under.
Okay. Why Burks over Woods? What do you like about Burks?
The big play potential. I think Burks could catch one deep pass and be over, and whereas Woods is, as you said, a possession receiver. We're still getting Burks back into the fold, but he did play 79% of snaps against the Texans last week. 18 routes was 66% of the team's routes. Yes, he saw 2 targets and has no production. The only production he's had since week 13 is that crazy touchdown catch that knocked him out. But right before that, he had an 111-yard receiving day, a 70-yard receiving day, 2 straight games of 100 air yards. If you're playing fantasy, over 17 fantasy points in both those games. That seems like a changing of the guard. That injury slowed down.
Yeah, and someone else to think about it with Josh Dobbs. He's only been like with the team for a week and a half. So it's not even like, hey, they worked together well in the preseason. We can't go to any of that. We don't know how much he knows the offense. As you mentioned, he really hasn't played much in the NFL. I went back and looked at his college stats at Tennessee, where Dobbs was a dual threat quarterback. He did throw for close to 3,000 yards in the SEC as a senior. So something. He's got
respectable.
He's got an arm that, he once used.
Look, if he's been with the team 8 days and they've seen enough, they're playing him over Malik Willis. Maybe that's more of an indictment of Malik Willis than a praise of Dobbs. But to me, this just reeks of full preseason mode. And if you've been with us all season, you know what that means. They're going to be cycling players in and out, despite there just being an 11-player pool on No House Advantage. There's going to be a much bigger skill position pool, arguably for both teams, if the game goes as we expected. It's actually a really good thing from a real football perspective to get a chance to see the bottom of your roster right at the end of the season with actual playoff potential after it. So I think these teams take advantage of it, especially if the game gets out of hand, which is why we're leaning to so many unders, except for the running backs who don't even need to be all too efficient if they get 16 plus carries. Yeah, and again, the Titans are looking at next week. They're resting up the rest of their whole defense and taking on the Jaguars next week with the AFC South on the line. I think NFL show live before lock will be interesting tonight, where you get more into the deeper player pool there. So be sure to check that out right here on the Stokastic DFS channel. But next up, NBA, No House Advantage. Terry and Gundak are coming your way. Mr. Savoca, nice to do a show with you again. It really was, man. Happy New Year if I don't see you, and best of luck to you guys. Let's win some money on NHA. Let's get it.